Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me? Please, can someone confirm if they can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon once again. My name is Dennis Williams, and I'll be your moderator for today. Welcome to another exciting session that we'll be having shortly on our artificial intelligence class. Our topic for today is AI ethics and governance. I want to welcome especially all our mentors that are currently in session. And I also want to welcome our mentees who were able or who are able to join in for today's session. I trust and I promise it's going to be a wonderful and a very interactive session that we're going to have today. Right. So while we are about to start, I'll just go ahead and make some announcements. Right. So our first announcement for today is that sorry, our first announcement for today is that registration is officially ending. Right, registration is officially ending today. For those who still not today, this week, I mean, sorry, for those who have friends and family who are still interested in participating in this particular program, you are free to let your friends know that they can still register for it, and we'll do well to give kind admittance to them, right? And for those who register through our free link, right? If you are still interested in our program, right, we kindly advise that you the certificate, I mean, we kindly advise that you make payments before the end of the quarter. So we'll be going straight to introduce our mentors. Our first mentor for today is Mr. Gabriel Udo. Mr. Gabriel Udo is a research fellow at the Robotics and Artificial Intelligence Law Society, Wales, Berlin, with a strong passion for the intersection of AI, law, ethics, and society. Also, he is a PhD candidate at the European University Viadrina, focusing on the law and ethics of autonomous weapon system. His expertise span topics like robotics, smart city technology, digital colonialism, and privacy. He's also proficient in Python programming and data analysis. Thank you, Mr. Gabriel, for joining in for today's session. We're happy to have you in our midst. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. Our second mentor for today is Mr. Miles Isaacs. Miles Isaacs is an undergraduate of the King's College London, where he is currently pursuing his bachelor's degree in philosophy. Miles is an artificial intelligence enthusiast. He is a member of the International Churchill Society and the Royal United Kingdom Institute, UK. You're welcome, Mr. Miles. We're happy to have both our mentors with us. We're happy to have both our mentors here with us for today's session. And we like to thank them also, and also thank our mentees who were able to make it to class. So we'll be getting into the business of today. All right, we'll be getting into the business of today, and I would just like for us to just have our mentors come do justice to today's topic. We would like to have Mr. Gabriel Udo come just give us an introduction into what AI ethics and governance is. So you're welcome to today's class. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Can you hear me? Dennis, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dennis? I can't. Can you turn on your mic and confirm whether you can hear me?
Sorry, Mr. Gabriel, can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, please, sir. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, I just wanted I wanted someone to confirm whether you can hear me before I start speaking.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. First of all, let me apologize for having to turn off my camera for today. I just got back into Germany, so it's a little bit still trying to settle in, and a couple of things I haven't yet been able to sort out. So sincere apologies. I usually would prefer to turn on my camera. Let me thank the other mentor also for for being here today. Yeah, I can see Miles here. Thank you so much for making our time to be here. I'm just going to be very brief, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, because I got the presentations. I got copies of the presentation that are going to be made today. So as usual, I prefer to hear first from the mentees before I make comments or say, make any adjustments to the presentations where necessary. But first of all, let me just give, a very quick overview. What's the idea behind AI governance, right? Usually people mix this up. AI governance is it's more like the frameworks, like guardrails that people put in place sometimes in companies or other kinds of institutions, any institution that's using artificial intelligence, or sometimes um, governments, like we have in many places. We talk about the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act at the moment, and as I yesterday we had the of course again the EC's Artificial Intelligence Treaty, and we have others like the OECD and so on and so forth. So basically, these are governance frameworks that provide for rules and standards. These standards that direct artificial intelligence research, development, or how we apply safety standards and fairness, and how they are used in a way that they respect human rights. Um, Usually, we like to see this in small organizations. How do you organize? Um, what kind of AI systems are being used? How are they being used? Are they being used in an ethical manner? Are they being used safely? And a couple of other considerations here and there. So basically, this is the idea of AI governance generally. Now, speaking about AI ethics, this is, I mean, at the moment, I feel it's a little bit being overflogged, but it's never enough, right? When we consider the impact that artificial intelligence can have on our society. Um, uh, Miles is more into philosophy, so he would make more sense with ethics. And I'd let him do a lot more of the conversation on ethics. But basically, the idea is, since at the moment we do not have enough, um, of course, in my opinion, I don't think we have enough legislations, or there's no clarity as to what regulations specifically bind some specific areas of artificial intelligence. Usually, for those that understand a little bit of jurisprudence, when positive law is not enough to cover a particular subject matter, many times societies fall back on ethics and morality. So this is what's going on here. We have ethical principles. Some have been developed into legislations or regulations. Some have been developed into legal frameworks themselves. So, and there are ethical principles, many of which, like I mentioned, has have been discussed. Issues like explainability, transparency, how transparent is your system, and so on and so forth. How fair, what kind of fair uses have been um, what kind of fairness can be found in the use of your artificial intelligence or whatever technologies you're being used. Now, we have some examples. I mentioned some examples of AI governance frameworks. We usually would mention the GDPR also, because um, artificial intelligence is more of data and algorithm. So, of course, any regulation that talks about how data is being used, how um, the data is passed from one person to another, how a person's data is being handled. Also, of course, certainly would cover certain areas of related to artificial intelligence, or will impact the use of artificial intelligence, since artificial intelligence deals with data. I also mentioned the OECD principle that was already adopted by over 40 countries, I think 40 or 42 countries. And this talk about issues like trustworthy AI. It has to be transparent, it has to be fair, there has to be elements of accountability on the use of AI systems. Then there are other corporate ethics boards in companies. For instance, most companies now, especially in Europe, have corporate boards. They have departments that deal with AI regulation within the system. So these are still um, governance frameworks. I talked about the idea of AI governance, and now I've mentioned how it is structured in companies, for instance. In governments, we could have ministries or departments specifically that deal with artificial intelligence. In Europe, now we have the Artificial Intelligence Office that has been established by the new AI Act. I'm not sure what we have in Africa, but I know in some countries, like in Nigeria, we have the Ministry of Science and Technology that, they are the ones that deal with these governance frameworks. Um, I'm sure someone's going to have, have parts of the presentations on the principles that govern AI. We've talked about bias control to ensure that there's no real world biases are not embedded into AI algorithms. And then there's transparency. Of course, people must know. For instance, one of the major areas of transparency is people that interact with artificial intelligence must be informed that they are interacting with AI. There's also the issue of accountability. When something goes wrong, who do we hold responsible? Right? We can see some of these issues also in the White House executive order that was out September, October last year. Um, we've also discussed areas like safety and security, privacy protection, civil rights, including issues like there are wider discussions on democracy, right? How the use of artificial intelligence affects democracies in large, let's say in countries or in larger areas. Then we can look at innovation and competition, global leadership and government use of AI, how governments specifically use artificial intelligence in governance or even in politics or in information dissemination. These are the major areas, but then we could very quickly, I could mention that you can also break down the approaches of governance, right? There are three major approaches. The first approach is the informal governance that is mostly used by um, by company boards, internal structures of companies. This is the informal governance structures. They just have internal values and principles of that organization that guide the use of AI. For instance, if some companies say you are not allowed to pass certain information from point A to point B, whatever AI is used for the passage of information within the framework of that company must follow through that. Then we also have the ad hoc governance framework, which is a little bit more formal than the informal, but is not fully formal, right? That um, it's for specific, they develop these structures for particular risks. For instance, if a company is at the risk of data breaches, data privacy breaches, then they could develop a framework specifically for the use of AI in such a manner that it does not breach uh, data privacy within the context of that company. So specific risks or challenges that an AI system may pose can be specifically dealt with. Then finally, we have the formal governance structure, which is usually considered the highest, right? It's the one that mostly is used by governments and government agencies, usually for risk assessments, oversight processes, or even ethical reviews. So these are the three major areas, and then we could look at how governance structures are being are deployed. They are met, what we call like the health score matrices. Is it dangerous? Like under the EU AI Act, we rather use the risk-based approach where we have for risk levels. So this, you put AI systems into those boxes. Is it risky? Is it less risky? Does it pose no risk and all that? So we have these health scores. Then we can also monitor the use of AI systems. It's still part of the governance framework. We can use visual dashboards to look at how these systems are being operated. These dashboards will show real-time updates. What's the risk? Is there an update on the system? What risk does the new system pose? Then we could look at performance alerts. We can also carry out audits, right? When we use a system, we could check for loopholes or the probabilities that the systems could pose certain risk. There are many other areas, right? But I would leave the rest of that to I'll leave the rest of the discussion for maybe after the presentation, and hopefully the presentation covers a lot more. So thank you so much, I look forward to hearing from the mentees and their presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel, for that wonderful introduction into our discourse for today. We are happy that you're able to share your own thoughts and perspective and also give us some insights into what AI ethics and governance is. We would like to also have Mr. Miles, right? Mr. Miles, please. We also want to hear from you. We want to hear from your own perspective and from your own standpoint of view. What is your own take on the topic or the subject matter for today, AI ethics and governance? You're welcome, Mr. Miles.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? All okay?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm planning on sharing my screen so I can present my presentation, if that's all right.
Just fine. That's fine, sir.
Um, okay, fantastic. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay, let's see. Okay, so brief introduction of myself. So as Gabriel mentioned before, and Dennis, I'm a philosophy student at King's here in London. I'm very interested in the intersection between AI and law and how to govern AI, as well as just more deep-rooted philosophical questions. From my personal bias with regards to sentience, if AI systems can feel, if they have emotion, uh, um, and how to deal with what we have, the concerns, the strengths, and what to do with that with regards to governance. So AI ethics and governance is a three-pronged approach. I wanted to take it and just dissect it completely. Um, in the title, you have AI, you have ethics, and then you have governance. And each of those words mean different things, um, and need to be outlined before knowing what the debate is, for clarity. So the first question I pose is what is AI? The majority of people actually don't know what AI is. They just know that they presume it's a computer of some sort or a phone or something smart. But the AI is really a program that follows a system of logic in order to with the goal of stimulating and replicating and mimicking human behavior, just as we've seen within computers, the ability for computers to replicate human behavior with regard to thinking, thought process, we see intelligence, and we see the ability for rational thinking and logical thinking to be able to solve puzzles, and have pattern recognition. All of these traits and characteristics are in the pursuit of mimicking human intelligence and human behavior. So that's what AI. Second one is what is ethics. As a philosophy student myself, I admit this slide did take me quite a long time to do because philosophers, what they like to do is they like to sit down and find one definition, agree on it, and then the next day disagree. So the question of what ethics is a difficult question, but in simple terms, ethics is behavior or standard imposed by us, or by some external authority, that presupposes some existence of morality and some baseline difference between right and wrong, some shared and common human values that we all have, regardless of where we are around the world, and how we act on that. And so AI and ethics combined is the study of these moral principles that rely on morality that are involved in AI systems that are responsible for mimicking human behavior, and how we address the concerns and strengths of such. Lastly, the three terms combined, so AI, ethics, and governance, is addressing what artificial intelligence is, what ethics is, governance just denoting how to govern AI. But AI, ethics, and governance is really dealing with how to govern the AI based off the ethical concerns of these systems or MLs. And when governing anything really, you need to take into account the weaknesses, the concerns, the worries, as well as the strengths. So concerns of AI, ethics, management, governance. How do you govern an AI system? It's supposed to. It could take away 90% of jobs, as Elon Musk said. Take away 90% of jobs. So where would people work? If you scale it up even more, education might not be a thing. I might not be learning from lecturers anymore. I may be learning from a robot, going to a hotel, going to a restaurant. The human ability would be effaced if AI were to be scaled. So how do you manage AI? Error, human fallibility. Humans are prone to error. So all of the systems that AI is built on relies on and is open to human error. Bias, deep fakes, fake news, algorithmic bias, all just to name a few of the certain weaknesses. Strengths, bias also is a strength. I also work for a AI law firm here in London, and they use the bias that their AI does in order to benefit themselves.
Please, can anyone confirm? It seems okay. It seems Mr. Miles has an issue from his end. Mr. Miles, please, are you still with us?
I am still with you now. I've just got back.
Oh, okay,
I
okay. Thank
apologize
you.
about
Welcome.
that. Thank you. I was just wrapping up the presentation, but the last question is how do we govern AI, the main topic of this week. And although it's a terribly difficult question to answer, one of intense debate, I wanted to outline a few methods that we have to maintain regardless. The first one is transparency, as Gabriel touched on. You have to be transparent. the customer, the user, the citizen should be entirely aware of when an AI is in use and when the AI is being used on them. Second is safely and being managed ethically. I outlined some of the ethical issues, and as a result, it should be managed safely, not to harm mentally or psychologically the person or people. AI should be governed in a way that upholds the rule of law. It should be governed in a way that respects basic human rights and conforms to international and domestic law. One of the most important things as well is that it takes into account diversity. all around the world, different countries govern their AIs, their AI systems differently, based on culturally relative morality, based on different values. Certain countries may want to push a bias whereby men are more favorable than women in certain societies, but diversity has to be respected. And as a result, from all of the listed above, when it comes to governing AI, the baseline is respect, transparency, abiding to international domestic law as well as democracy, and promoting and maintaining diversity. And that concludes my presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miles, for that wonderful presentation from you on what AI ethics is, some of the insights into what contains in AI ethics and governance. Thank you so much for running us through with that. Please, it's time for us to have our mentees presentation. I seem to not see the presence of any group member of Group 1 who submitted their presentation. And I don't know if there's anyone from Group 1 who can fill in for their group members to make the presentations that were submitted. Do we have any mentees who are ready with their presentation? Please, can our mentees kindly confirm that their presentation or the group presenters are in class and also ready to make presentation? Okay. I don't know what the issue is. Presentations are a core part of our classes, and we seem not to have anyone ready to make presentation. Okay, Mr. Gabriel, please, back to you, sir. Since our mentees are having a little bit of issues running us through with their presentation, so I would like to hear from you further on the takes you have as pertaining the presentation that was actually sent to you. What are your takes, and how would you say AI ethics and governance has helped make the world, will I say, a better place in that context, sir?
Okay, yeah. Thank you. First of all, sincerely, I didn't really have a lot of time to read through, go through the whole presentation, but from what I could see and from what I have in front of me, it's AI governance, AI regulation and governance is actually a very wide area that's becoming wider, and it's usually very complicated to cover everything, put it that way, right? Ethics is okay. The ethics dimension is a little bit more complicated, like Miles mentioned, because first of all, to even make regulations, to build governance frameworks, you need to define certain ideologies, and ideologies like artificial intelligence is still being debated. It doesn't look like we're having a direction. So we have that's the first problem, the difficulty of definitions, and it makes presentations like this more more complicated, because before you even start going to the depth of the discussion, you need to define what you're referring to when you say artificial intelligence. Now, why ethics is very important is, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, the absence of strict regulations on certain areas. The society usually falls back on, in jurisprudence would say, natural law principles, right? It could be what we call now ethics or morality in itself. It's more like an auto reset. The society falls back to that. Ethics is also important because so far we've looked at the very many complications that the use of artificial intelligence could bring, right? A couple of weeks ago, I concluded a project with the Mozilla Foundation, and we're looking at the impact of synthetic media, right? AI generated content. And then we saw so many areas where there could be issues, where there have been problems. The issues of, issues like deepfakes, some of which Miles has mentioned already. The use of deepfakes could go so far. It could affect even whole democracies, like I mentioned earlier. It could affect people's images. It could affect governments. It could affect whole societies, right? So this is, one of the very popular negative impacts of the use of artificial intelligence. And in the absence of ethical principles to check these things, then we are certainly going to be in trouble. Then, especially in smaller cycles where you have, for instance, in corporate quarters, in companies, the importance of ethics is, again, falls back to the fact that we don't really have a lot of regulations at the moment. There are no stringent definitions. Sometimes, for instance, even in the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act, you see definitions that, they try to squeeze AI systems into boxes. There's a high risk and all that. But there's still questions as to what do we truly mean when we say that a system is high risk. So again, these ethical principles, like what we have from the OECD and from many others, we have some from UNESCO and all that. These principles would always help, in defining standards in the absence of stringent regulations for the use of artificial intelligence systems. Now, why governance is important is that even in the presence of ethics, even in the presence of regulations, governance frameworks would help to fit in, to define what is important, because it's not everything that is important to specific circumstances. Example, there are companies that use certain types of AI, let's say biometric systems, and they would need a governance framework that, first of all, defines what kind of regulation, what kind of ethical principles are necessary for that corporate system. Secondly, it will create a responsibility, who and who. So more like I mentioned earlier, like having a department who is responsible for executing these ethical principles, or for checking these systems for things like auditing and confirming that these systems are not just being, thrown open and with all the risks that they bear. So this is why AI governance is it's important. And in larger circumstances, for instance, in countries, governance principles are as important as democracy itself. In, for instance, democratic countries like Nigeria, you're certainly going to need a structure, a governance structure, to be sure that whatever regulation we put in place or whatever ethical principle we choose to follow is being properly outlined, first of all, and then the execution of those principles is being properly guided. There are people responsible for their execution, and there are systems that ensure that execution is being followed through. I've looked at the presentation. I've seen landscape of AI governance and regulation, though the person didn't really mention some of, didn't give instances of regulations that provide, governance principles or regulations for this. I just saw the current landscape, and that was one slide. But I'm really happy to see the principles of AI governance. This is very important: accountability, auditability, explainability. Usually, the ability of system to be audited is usually considered to be under explainability. Can you explain what the system does, right? So when it's audited, can we find out everything? Are there black boxes? Are there areas where people cannot access, where people do not really understand? Then there is fairness. As important as that is, yes, I think it's fairness encompasses they fix the problem with biases and all that. Then there's robustness, security, how secure are your systems. Safety and security sometimes are considered together, but they are, of course, they are separate because there's a safety of the system, there's a safety of the individual. Then there's also the security of the system, and there's a security of people. Then, very importantly, is transparency. People need to know what they are using, and how they are using it, how it's being used against them. Reproducibility is a little bit questionable. I would have loved to get the explanation for that, because if you're referring to the ability of a system to be reproduced, then there are going to be issues at the long run. There's a very thin line between transparency, explaining to people, or let's say you're trying to test it in sandboxes, in regulatory sandboxes. You have to explain to maybe the government agencies, this is what this system does. And there's a thin line between that and trade secrets. Must you be able to reproduce this system? Remember, we have open source systems, we have closed systems that they are not open source. So the company just provides the service, and then there's a limit to what you can know. So I would have loved to hear more on that reproducibility. There's human agency and oversight, very importantly, especially in the use of artificial intelligence in risky areas like military systems or armed conflicts. There has to be someone, at the back ensuring that there's somebody's responsible for how that system works. And in the case of failure, there's somebody to turn on the kill switch or something. Privacy and data governance is also very important. And then there's inclusivity. Now, the last point here, inclusive growth and sustainable development and all that, is something that's really important. It strikes especially at the core of the global South, Africa, for instance. We have been at the lower end of inclusive growth most times, not just in AI or in technology, but in most areas. Africa seems to be a little disconnected from the rest of the world when it comes to fast-paced development. And this is why this is very important. Now we're hearing lots of global regulations or global ideologies that are developed by the global north or are developed in the west and are just being passed down to Africa. Now we need to know, is this inclusive enough? Will this aid in sustainable development in the African continent or in other parts of the global south, like in some parts of Asia and so on and so forth. Yeah, we've also seen approaches to AI governance, and I've seen some initiatives here. There's an initiative in Nigeria. I thought the presentation was going to deal with that, and I would have loved to hear more about that. Yeah, then so that's basically what I could pick from the presentation. I would have loved to hear from the mentees, but I hope some other time we get to hear from them. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. Thank you for helping us give a run through and a breakdown of the presentation. You were able to identify and spot out some things that the mentees put in and some other things that they were unable to put in. And I trust that they were taking notes and also paying attention to everything that you said about ethics and governance. I also like for us to receive Miles' comments. I'm sure the presentation was sent to him. I'm very sorry that they were sent in very late. That was because we're expecting the all second group to also make submission, but I think because maybe of constraints, especially with the network providers, they have been very poor recently. So we sincerely apologize for the late submissions or for the late sending of the presentations to our mentors. But we would like to hear from you, having maybe gone through a little bit of the presentation that was sent in. What are your thoughts and perspective on then on the presentation. Are there any areas where you feel like there's corrections, things that they did not put into view while making the presentation? We'd like to hear from you, Mr. Mouse.
So, so I received the presentation, I believe it was yesterday, and I actually couldn't access it because the document was private. So I requested access, and I haven't heard back. So I haven't been able to open the presentation because it was a private presentation.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that. Okay, we sincerely apologize for that. But we still want to hear from you. Maybe do you have any further contributions on today's topic, since you feel like maybe from your own point of view, just maybe side pieces or side points on AI ethics and governance, things out of convention, out of the book kind of knowledge that you would like to share with us?
Um, Certainly. I mentioned briefly before I cut out was about deepfakes, and they first started, um, being some sort of like a playful game people used to do when sending a birthday message. Some people would make a deep fake of Beyonce singing happy birthday to them, um, all for fun and games. But AI became more powerful and grew a lot since then. And now we've seen, rather than Beyonce singing happy birthday to you, we've seen Biden and Trump saying the most outlandish and inappropriate stuff on a deep fake that they didn't actually say. And the consequences of this are huge when it comes to democracy, because people will believe it, and the people who believe it will be doxastic in what they believe. No one will be able to tell them otherwise. And then you have a society meltdown whereby everyone's believing the fake and no one's believing the real. So I suppose I really wanted to stress the importance of AI regulation and governance, when it comes to potential threats on democracy.
Sorry, Miles, please, can you hear us? You seem to be mute.
Yes, I have no further contributions. I just wanted to stress that point.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that very, very wonderful contribution. We really, really appreciate your shared knowledge and everything that you have imputed in the last 40 minutes or so. We really, really do appreciate. Okay, we would like to hear from our mentees now. We would like to give the floor for questions. AI ethics and governance. I think Miles just pointed out a very, very important point as the kind of abuses that can happen with AI if there are no proper regulations and governance, right? People's voice being taken and deep fakes and things like of that sort and of that nature. So please, we would like to have questions from our mentees. We'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts and perspective? What is confusing? What do you feel like you need clarity on as regards AI ethics and governance. Are you the EU regulations? Some of you wrote on them, right? So we'd like to hear from your perspective. Do you have questions? Do you have questions, mentees? We'd like to hear from you. We are taking questions now. Please, let's make this session interactive. Mr. Mouse is still with us. Mr. Gabriel had to leave, but I'm sure Mr. Mouse will be willing and ready to answer any of our questions. So please, can we have questions for our mentor?
Feel free to ask away. And be shy. Anything you want to know, I'm more than happy to let you guys know.
Yes, so thank you very much. So, mentees, please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, all.
Yes, good afternoon.
My name is Philip Olochepuku. Sorry, I am supposed to be the backup presenter for Group 2, but I've been having difficulty with network. Hence my inability to do the presentation. My sincere apologies. I have two questions because I'm in transit, so we don't get to hear the noise with me. One is the fact that if you check the history of the development of AI, it's been in place since the late 1970s. And till now, we don't have properly collated regulations in that regard before the products hit the market, like we're having them in different forms now. What could be responsible for that? And how fast can we go into curbing this lacuna? That's one. Two, some countries already developed some laws regulating some aspects of AI. Is it possible for our mentors to avail us these laws in some of these European countries so we can assess, go through them, and then consume for proper understanding? Thank you.
Mr. Miles, are you with us?
I didn't quite catch the second question.
Okay. I think if I were to, oh, please, Mr. Oloche, please, can you go ahead and rephrase your question?
Okay, sorry. Like I did say, I said I've been battling network for hours now. So the first question is, can we get me properly?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, the first one is, if you check the history of AI, it's been in process in development since the late 1970s. And a lot of people are beginning to assess them lately, not quite long. So what could be responsible for that delay in developing regulations, even before the product hits the market? Like we are having them now, what could be responsible for that long delay? Why were there no laws in place before AI hits market or people get to know about much of its uses and other things? That's one. Two, I also understand that some developed countries already have specific regulations in this regard. Is it possible for our mentors to avail us, to make available these laws for us to also go through, digest them, and properly understand some perspective from these developed countries? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oloche. Mr. Miles, did you get the question now?
Yes.
Okay, please, we'd like to hear from you. Why do you?
Sorry?
Okay, yeah, we're listening. We're listening.
Okay, fantastic. First of all, the first question is a fantastic question. Regarding history of AI, why it hasn't been, what is responsible for the delay in regulation and developing AI. I think the main point here is technology. The advances in technology have been drastic ever since the 1970s and afterwards, giving advanced research and discoveries in science, in maths, which opens up the whole horizon of opportunities. And so we saw that as an opportunity for a non-intelligent, for an intelligent, non-human body of intelligence to be formulated. that's addressing a point of why it's taken so long to get to the stage where it has of being implemented, is technology. The reason why there's been a delay in regulation is potentially because countries and people had previously underestimated the power of AI. Just like people had underestimated how Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone 2, and its power and its Apple's potential. I think the same applies here. People were unaware and ignorant of how powerful AI was until AI started to be implemented lawlessly, effectively lawlessly, and how people and the general world started using AI to see what benefit it would do for them. The more people that use it, the more regulation is involved. But since not many people were using it, not many people were aware of it, not many people were aware that it was being used on them, which is why I emphasized transparency previously in my slides on one of the ethical concerns of AI. But the delay in jurisdiction and legislation, governance, rests on public knowledge of what it even is, and a general consensus of a lack of understanding of how powerful AI is. Back then, in the 20th century, AI was not as powerful as it is now. Now, we're developing AGIs, artificial general intelligence, which would have been almost incomprehensible 50 years ago. It really rests down on the underestimation of how powerful AI is. That's a fantastic question. The second question, I believe, was asking about some developed countries and what they had done with their regulation. So I have here a write-up on is that systems in Europe are typically focused, especially in the UK, are typically focused on using AI in investment. But legislation is still being reviewed, different AI acts are being reviewed, different AI summits are being invoked and taking place. So certain principles that various countries may employ, you may find that later on down the line, not only has AI changed, has human intelligence changed, has non-human intelligence changed, but also has regulation changed. So take any AI regulated, any country that regulates their AI, majority of them, with a pinch of salt, that this is subject to change, as all laws are, but this is subject to more change because it's a very exciting time with artificial intelligence, and people are going to be finding more flaws, more errors, more biases and concerns within them. So yeah, but both were very good questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mouse. I think he was trying to, in his second question, he was trying to point out to if you had access to some of the laws that are currently being drawn up by some of the more developed countries, the first world countries, on their regulations for AI, and
so
if
and sorry,
yeah,
the last bit was if.
Yeah, so I was saying that he was trying to, I think for his second question, he was actually trying to point out to the, I would rather to ask if you had access to some of the laws, like if you had seen some of the laws that some of the more developed, the first world countries have implemented or put in place, right, to help solve this issue of AI ethics and governance and the biases. And if you, in your own disposition, could share, right, I think that was the essence of or the major pointer to his question.
Okay. The short answer is no. However, I do know I know a handful of people that are involved in the process of AI. I'm not going to say more on that because I don't think I can, but they're involved in the process. Yeah, they're involved in the process, but I'm not too worried with any legislation put in place as well. Each country will draft different regulations, but then you need then you have a whole load of more issues that arise with this. But the short answer to the question is no, but I do know people that are working on it.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Miles. We'll do well to also try and see if we can send these questions directly to Mr. Gabriel so that if at all he has any material that he can also share with the group, we'll do well to try and get that across to our mentees. And I think we still have a question here on the chat.
I just wanted to mention there's a fantastic article. I wanted to mention that there's a fantastic article that I can send that I've read last. It's I can send it on the chat. Yeah.
That would be much appreciated, Mr. Miles. Thank you. Please, you can go ahead. Okay, yes, Mr. Miles just sent an article, a link to an article, right? So please, I'll kindly advise our mentees to just open it and read through it so that they can also get further information as regards the question that our mentee asked. So we're still taking questions. So there's a question here on the chat box. The question is, what are the improvements that can be made to the EU Act? So do you think there are, okay, if at all you've come across the EU Act, do you think there are any improvements that can be made on it?
I think that it was a solid act. What we had was the majority of the countries that were involved agreed on it, which was the first. Which was a first, but it's paramount that they agreed on it, the EU Act, because as I highlighted at the end of the previous question, different countries would push certain biases that are available to their countries. So certain countries may want to have more men in their workforce than women. Certain countries may want to have more fossil fuels and emit more carbon monoxide into the air. Certain countries want to do different things with their workforce, with their people, and use that in their AI. So having an agreement in Europe, an EU agreement is fantastic. For the people that are unaware of the AI, the EU AI Act, I wanted to mention just a few key proponents of the Act. So it splits the Act into splits AI systems into four categories. There's unacceptable risk, there's high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk. So minimal, high, limited, high, and unacceptable risk, based on intended use and potential harm that it may be incurred on citizens, civilians, workforce in general, just surprises and concerns that arise. There's also some prohibited AI practices that are considered unacceptable. Data record and keeping requirements, retention of data, and transparency. But when it comes to improvements of the AI Act, I think it was a thorough and concise act, and I'm glad that there's been a general consensus when it comes to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Mouse, for that your input. Okay, I think our mentees, and I also tried opening the file. It seems like it's not an accessible file. So we would like to please ask if it's going to be possible. You can send it maybe as an email so that we can share it on their subgroups, for them to go through it. Would that be possible, Mr. Mouse?
What about if I do this?
Okay.
I'm going to try something using technology. Let's see. Okay, tell me if so everyone on the call, let me know if you can see.
Sorry, we didn't get you, sir.
Can you see this? And everyone see that what I just posted in the chat right now?
Yes, I can see it. Okay, please, can our mentees also confirm we can see it?
That's the article.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Mouse, for sharing that with us. We really, really, really do appreciate for you also sharing the resources that can help us further better our understanding on today's subject matter. We're still taking questions. Are there any more questions, or do you think we can call it a day? Though our mentees still have questions. It seems, I don't know why, if we just have a few mentees left on call, but if there are no more questions, please, we'd like to take our picture time so that we can round up with today's session. So please, can our mentees turn on their videos if that's possible? Okay, can we have mentees turn on their videos? Sorry, my network is a bit slow, so please, can we just bear a little patience while I wait for the pictures for our videos to pop up? there seems to be a lot of issues with our network provider. Please, if it be possible, Sophie, please, can you help me take the pictures? My video seems to be frozen.
All right, I can. I'm coming.
Yes, please help us with that.
Sorry. All right, it's all done.
All right, thank you so much,
Fantastic.
Sophie, for helping our pictures. I sincerely also want to apologize for the network from my own end. It's been our network providers over here have been pretty wonderful. Mr. Miles, we are really grateful for your time and presence. You've been here with us for the last 2 sessions, and we are short of words on how to say thank you, but we'll do our best to just say thank you. And we look forward to also seeing you in further sessions. Thank you to our mentees that were able to join in on the call, irrespective of the network issues that most of us are currently facing. And we will look forward to seeing all of you in the next session. Thank you, everyone, and do have a lovely day ahead.
Thank you very much, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you for your